Hello, welcome back. Thank you for joining me for another week. I have a little special surprise guest at the end if you stick around. And in the meanwhile, I just wanted to share a quick thought that slides right into the theme of this week's piece. So, how can we understand the power of unity and the power of oneness between humans? All we have to look at is fire or a candle. If you have one candle with one flame on it, what happens if you blow on the candle? It goes out. What happens if you have this huge raging fire and the wind comes? Can the wind blow out that fire? No. The wind strengthens that fire. You see, this thing called wind and air has the power either to destroy a fire or to strengthen the fire. When there's a unified fire, it strengthens it. When it's one little single candle, which we compare a candle to a soul, the wind could blow it out. So it's on us to stay strong, unite, and have oneness amongst ourselves, and we're going to learn a fascinating piece right now about it. Thank you. Let's dive right in. Okay, Parshat Terumah, in memory of my father, of Shimshon ben Shalom. Let's get it. Exodus 25:8. And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. This is a famous verse in Hebrew, Va'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'socham. And on this verse, the holy Alshich, and including a lot of other rabbis, he writes the following. In this verse, it's not written in it, implying Hashem will dwell in the sanctuary, the tabernacle that we're being commanded to build. Rather, it says in them, implying that the divine presence can rest inside each and every Israelite. What's going on here? As so, we can see from the below verse from King David that the human acts as a sanctified vessel for the divine presence to rest upon. Psalm 78:60. It says, Vayitosh mishkan Shiloh ohel shikain ba'adam. He forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent he had set, and it says Be'adam, within man. So it's talking about the dwelling over here, King David, within man. Based on this understanding, we can ask why there was a need for Hashem's commandment to build a centralized tabernacle for the divine presence to rest, if in fact that presence was made to rest inside of all of man and dwells inside all the people of Israel. That's the question. We will now look into Tana D'Bei Eliyahu for some clarity. Tana D'Bei Eliyahu says, since Israel willingly accepted the yoke of the kingdom of heaven with joy, they said, everything that Hashem tells us we will do, Na'aseh v'nishma. Instantly Hashem responds and tells the children of Israel to make a tabernacle, a mishkan, as the verse above says, speak to the children of Israel, make for me a dwelling place. So we see, all of a sudden Israel accepts the Torah, and then immediately we get commandment to build the mishkan. So our first question is why the children of Israel accepting the laws of Hashem immediately leads to the commandment to make a tabernacle. What do the two have to do with each other that the Torah flows from one scenario right into the next? Let us say with the help of heaven that a principal concept in receiving and upkeeping the Torah is only through the collective unity that exists amongst the people of Israel, in which everyone loves their friend as they would themselves. As the verse in the Torah states, Exodus 19:2, having journeyed from Rephidim, they entered the wilderness of Sinai and encamped in the wilderness. Israel encamped there in front of the mountain. Exactly. So when it says Ki ish echad b'lev echad, Rashi comes in and says, as one man with one mind, one unified being, who had unity. This is teaching that prior to the receiving of the Torah, the condition for the Israelites was that they must stand in total unity with each other, and only through that will they be able to receive the Torah. And similarly, this unity is what causes the upkeep of the Torah, because through unity, it is as if all the people of Israel are collectively keeping the entirety of the Torah. This is similar to what was said in the writings of Beit Shmuel Acharon, to explain below the famous story from the Talmud. So in the Gemara on Tractate Shabbat 31a, it says there was an incident where a Gentile came before Shammai and said to Shammai, convert me on the condition that you teach me the entire Torah while I am standing on one foot. Shammai pushed him away with the builder's cubit in his hands. Shammai had a measuring stick, I believe Shammai was a builder by trade. Then the Gentile came before Hillel, and Hillel converted him and said to him, that which is hateful to you, do not do unto another. That is the entire Torah, and the rest is interpretation. Go study. Based on this fascinating story, the Maharsha explains that this is the commandment of love your brother as you love thyself, ahavta recha kamocha, as we'll see below. And through this, one can actually keep the entirety of the Torah. And it says in Leviticus 19:18, you shall not take vengeance or beat a grudge against your countrymen. Love your fellow as yourself. I am the Lord. So the Beit Shmuel comes to explain how this one commandment is as if you are keeping the entire Torah. Behold, it is written in the many books of wisdom from the sages, that every Israelite must keep the entire 613 commandments. And if you don't keep all the commandments, you must come back down to earth as a reincarnation, a Gilgul, an additional time to then keep the commandments that you were lacking. Yet we can see that many of the commandments are set up in a way which is not possible for everyone to keep them all. For example, the mitzvah of Leviright marriage, and the mitzvah to circumcise if you don't have a son. So whoever doesn't have a brother that passes away childless, which is Leviright marriage, how can we save this person from having to come back in reincarnation? He didn't fulfill this commandment. So what's going on here? It's not possible that we were set up that we could actually do all 613, because some of them require you to have a son. And some people don't have kids, some people have daughters. So what's going on? That person got messed over and he's got to come back reincarnation? No. The answer is that if he kept the mitzvah of love your neighbor as you love thyself, which in that case the people of Israel are considered one person, one body, and you get included in the mitzvah commandments of your brethren who keep the ones you cannot. So through loving your brothers and through being one with the tribe, you are included in the tribal bank account of commandments. And the deeper meaning of the story above regarding the convert is that this potential convert was afraid that he would convert and then have to be reincarnated. He's like, how do I do 613? I got to come back. Regel, leg, as the convert wanted to stand on one leg, can also mean time, occurrence, or a trip, as we could see it being used in the below verse, Numbers 22-28. Shalosh Regalim, the 3 appointed times of the year that we have to go together to go to the Temple of Jerusalem to see the Lord, the 3 holidays. Sukkot, Passover, and Shavuot. Shalosh Regalim, regel, legs. So the convert was saying, convert me on the condition that I can keep and learn the whole Torah while standing on one leg, which means to say that I want to convert, but how can I do it all in this one lifetime without needing to come back as a reincarnation? On this question, Hillel gave him an exact answer and said to him, just love your neighbor as you love thyself. In this way you are fulfilling the commandment from the Torah, and this allows you to keep the whole Torah in one shot. Even if you personally don't do all the commandments, you fulfill what the people of Israel collectively fulfills. You understand how incredible the concept is. And on this, the sages of Israel comment on the below Talmud. It says in Jerusalem Talmud, Tractate Nedarim, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And Rabbi Akiva comes in and says, this is a great principle in the Torah. Zehu klal gadol b'Torah, which is a super foundation. This is such a great principle since from the love we have for our people, Israel, we all have a share in the complete fulfillment of the Torah. Hence, it's a great principle. And now we can fully understand why Hashem commanded the Israelites to build a tabernacle. That the tabernacle is a unifying force for the people of Israel, since they have to come 3 times a year. And when the time for the king to recite the Torah, Hakel, as well, there is a gathering of men and women and children around it. And through this, it is as if all the people of Israel are considered one, and our mitzvot get pooled together. This is why the verse says, build for me a sanctuary, and through this the people of Israel will act as one, and a direct result of this unity, it will be as if all the people of Israel are keeping the entire Torah, and then this causes the end of the verse to happen, which is, so that I may dwell within them, which is the divine presence resting amongst us all, because as a result of keeping the Torah, the divine rests upon the keeper. And this knowledge can explain the above teaching from the Tana de Eliyahu, that when the people of Israel said, we will do and we shall listen, Hashem replies back right away. He says, okay, sure. In that case, build for me a tabernacle. Because how is it possible for each Israelite to upkeep the entire Torah as we discussed before? However, through the tabernacle for Hashem, a unity amongst Israel is formed, and through this unity, it is as if we are keeping the entire Torah, and then from this, we are worthy that Hashem's presence dwells within inside of us each individually. And behold, now in the time of the exile, where we don't have a temple or a tabernacle to come and visit, the advice to add unity amongst the people of Israel is to gather in the houses of prayer and the houses of study, the Beit Medrash, as they are the mini sanctuaries, and to gather for Torah learning and prayer with the congregation. And through this, even today, we can be considered on the level of upkeeping the entire Torah. And this explains the below teaching from the sages. Rabbi Yochanan says in Tractate Sanhedrin, from the blessing of the wicked person, Bilam, you can ascertain what was in his heart. So based on his blessing, we can see what was in his heart. He thought to say that they should not have synagogues and study halls, and instead he said, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob. He sought to say that the divine presence will not rest upon them. And Rashi comes to clarify this. Rashi says over here, from his blessing we can learn what was initially in his heart. As it says, Hashem flipped his curse to blessing, as he wanted to curse them that they would have no house of study and prayer. And he was not given permission for this curse. And he ended up saying, oh, how fine are your tents, O Israel. And the intention here, based on our thought process, that the functionality of the houses of study and the houses of prayer is the medium for the oneness between our people, as we spoke about earlier. And with this, Bilam wanted to curse the people of Israel that they should have no houses of worship or houses of prayer or houses of study, as he knew that the unity amongst the people of Israel was the secret of Israel keeping the Torah and the causality of the divine presence resting amongst them. Fascinating piece. I just want to close out with one quick thought, that there's also a teaching that at the time of the giving of the Torah, we had crowns on our heads. We had left the curse and the sin of Adam and Eve, and we had this light inside of our mind. And then comes the sin of the golden calf, and we leave that, and the divine presence leaves us personally, and then we had to have this structure to hold it in place, that one day it will re-enter us individually again, and we will feel the Shekhinah, we will feel the divine presence in us. So the best thing we could do is just stay humble and prepare until then, and that's that. I don't know if you guys want a quick shout out, maybe poke your head into the camera. We got Pasha, one of the greatest Torah scholars I've ever met in my life.
Before you can love anybody like yourself, well, first you gotta like yourself. When we're chilling, and we make ourselves the Beis Hamikdash for the Hasharas HaShechina, for the resting of His divine presence.
Well said.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. Super chill.
We're gonna turn that little speech into an NFT one day. Over and out, guys.